Hello and welcome to live coverage of the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup. This is round 7 from Suzuka in Japan, and Sean Hensherwood, the heavens are about to open once again today. It's been raining torrentially on and off. We've just put the umbrella up as we're moments away from race time.
Well, it's been interesting. Yesterday we had two 45-minute sessions, dry conditions. Last night the heavens opened. It hasn't really relented. We lost the first qualifying session. We had to take the second qualifying session to set this grid, and we've just seen him pull up there now. The reigning champion, Andrew Haryanto, his second ever pole in the Cup. He will start from the front, but what are the conditions going to bring? It's going to be very, very testing.
Well, it feels almost like a night race with the headlights going on from some of the cars. But before we get into the action from today, let's take a look back at the highlights from last time out in Shanghai in China. Well, Sean, the cars will be fighting for position on the track. We're fighting for position under this umbrella right now. It is, as we talked about, it is opening up. But let's look back at Shanghai. Those 2 wins for Anthony Liu, but several other people getting back into the championship race.
Well, you go back before that to Zhuhai. The man behind us, Alex Au, had pole for both races, didn't finish a single lap. He was really behind the 8 ball. He came through to be second behind Anthony Liu in both those races, has put himself back into contention for the championship. What's interesting is Yasser Shahin still leads. He had a 22-point advantage going into Shanghai. It got withered down to about 18 points for this weekend. Championship still wide open. Nobody wants to win this thing. Last year you had 4 wins to Burt Birrenbach. You had 3 wins to Andrew Haryanto. They're basically winless. They've got a lot of work ahead of them because Haryanto's come through. He's got pole position. He could be in a good position today.
That's right. He's, of course, he said, on the front row of the grid alongside Alex Au. He was about half a second ahead of the field in a pretty truncated qualifying session earlier today. What do you make of his chances?
Well, I think Alex Au had the pace, to be perfectly honest. Of course, both those drivers have had experience here in the past. 2017 for Haryanto. He did double duty, 2 classes that weekend. The rest of the field really don't have the experience. Although Burt Birrenbach, I'd keep a close eye on the Thai driver. He tends to do quite well in the wet. He's had experience here before.
Now, Andrew Haryanto needs a good couple of performances here to get back. If he's got any chance of retaining the championship title that he holds, Yasser Shahin in pole position at the moment, and he has his habit, we've talked about this before, of doing well on his first race at a track. Another debut here for him at Suzuka. Are we going to see that trend continue?
We could see that trend to continue, but the thing is the weather. We don't know what it's going to do. A lot of water crosses the track at the breaking point down at the end of the main straight. They need to be mindful of that. They've been a little bit haphazard on the starts in some of the previous races. They really can't afford to do too much of that this time around.
Well, Sean, I'm going to make a very quick dash for the commentary box and leave you to walk us through the field. But it's Suzuka. Let's take a look at some colours from the area.
I'm with the director of Audi Sport Customer Racing Asia, Martin Kuhl, and this is a little bit shades of Spa. We need to explain a little bit about that. We were at Spa a couple of weeks ago for the road to Spa with some of these drivers on the grid, the heavens open, torrential rain. That might put Andrew Harrianto in pretty good stead, but he needs some points.
He does need some points. So he drove in the rain at night at Spa brilliantly. He won the qualifying. He's on pole, so I guess he's quite comfortable with the rain now. I think we all are. Well, let's see. It's challenging. I mean, for all the drivers, this is an iconic but also not very easy circuit. So in these conditions, they really have to be careful. But the spirits were high. When I talked to the drivers before the race, they're up for the challenge. But it's gonna be a challenge.
We talked about this championship. Nobody seems to want to win it this year. Last year there were the two. It was Burrett and Andrew. This year everybody's right in the mix.
Absolutely. Almost everybody actually had one or two unexpected, not so good results, so that nobody really was able to get enough points to be ahead. But that's also a good thing. I mean, this is the history of the Cup. Has shown many times that our grid is very competitive and the drivers are actually fighting until the last very event.
Looks like we better get off the grid because it looks like they want to get these things going.
Yes.
I'll let you go. We'll talk to you a little bit later. But things are really starting to get underway. Martin gets off the grid. We'll get off the grid as well. You can see the cars there. The lights are on. This is uncharted waters for a number of these drivers because they haven't done a lot of miles around this circuit. One short and 15-minute session in the rain. So for a number of them, the two Australians here on the second row. In fact, that's not Spirit Birnbach. There's Tony Bates. He's not been here before. Yasser Shahin has not been here before. So too Vincent Florendo. They have got a little bit of work ahead of them. It's going to be very, very tough. They're pioneers as they go through this race. It's going to be a tough start to what will be the 87th race of the Cup in the 8th season. And we will just wander back because this weekend too is not just about the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup. Of course, it is the Intercontinental GT Challenge, the Suzuka 10 Hour. We have 3 entries, one of which is also run by Absolute Racing, responsible, of course, for the bulk of the teams in the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup. And we will see them carry on after a 3rd position here last year. They'll be looking for more. It's going to be big for them. Team WRT as well. And Hirotsuyama have former Cup champion Alessio Piccirillo as part of their crew this weekend. So there is more action that will come on Sunday. For us, race 1 today, race 2 also going to take place on Saturday. So we're all over by Saturday afternoon. This is the penultimate round of the 8th season. We're up to Mark. He will be in the commentary position. We're about ready to go for a start behind safety car for round 7 of the 2019 Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup.
Well, Sean, that's exactly right. We are starting this race under the safety car, and the big question at this stage is just how long will it stay out for? Let's hope we get some racing, but nothing is certain today. Of all days, we had a cancelled qualifying session initially earlier today, and you can see condition wet. I think that's the understatement of the day. It is not too hot, but it's all about the rain. They can get some standing water here on this track, and that will be the issue that all the race officials will be keeping a keen eye on early in this race. Nothing we can do about the weather. As we get confirmation here of the current championship standings, Yasser Shahin with a pretty healthy 15-point lead, but still with 4 races to go. There are a lot of points left to be won. Alex Au is second, and he starts from pole position with Tony Bates in third. And then it's Xiongyan Wen, who's unable to start today to cement his lead in the GT4 category. So Haryanto and Au on the first row of the grid. Then comes Yasser Shahin, the championship leader, with Burrit Burambagdi in position number 4. Tony Bates alongside Vincent Florendo. They start from the third row. Next up, George Nakas making his Cup debut, as is Shozo Takahara, a local driver from Japan, and Wang Dangjia in the GT4 category, which Takahara is also in, will go from the 5th row of the grid. But a reminder, if you're just joining us here live for coverage of the Audi Sports R8 LMS Cup, the start will be under the safety car, and no signs that it will be going in anytime soon. So let's take a look at this iconic Suzuka circuit, one of the top circuits in the world as rated by many of the best drivers who have ever raced. Over 5 kilometers in length and 18 turns, as you can see, with that crossover, the S's section, and plenty of other famous areas. Well, Sean, you probably got pretty wet like I did on the way back here. And, well, we'll see once we get underway just how much spray there is.
Yeah, plenty of precipitation, and it's going to be interesting. I think they're going to start the clock. We'll be running behind the safety car, maybe a lap or two, just so that they can get a feel for what the circuit's like. We're talking about it down there on the grid. There's a big channel runs across the circuit on the run down to turn 1 at the braking point. They're aware of that, but they're not really sure of exactly where all the standing water is on the circuit. Now, a lot of the drivers have said that it drains very well. There's not a lot of serious water that they have to think about, but this precipitation is pretty heavy. There was some threat at one stage that some of these sessions might stop for a little while for the rain to clear, but I think we should be pretty good. It looks like it's probably going to pass at some stage during the race. It's been very intermittent during the day, so there's a lot for the drivers to consider. And
it's also late in the day here. It's coming up for 5:30 local time here in Japan, but it's just getting so dark and gloomy. You can see the headlights are on. That's another issue for the visibility for these drivers, and of course feeding into the whole safety aspect here. So it's Andrew Haryanto and Alex Au at the front of this field, but ahead of them, of course, that safety car.
Safety, sorry, Mark, cutting you off, but safety, of course, is paramount for all of these things. You can't quite see that channel across the circuit. It's just near the entry road that was on the left of the circuit. That's just for access to the teams. The boss of Audi Sport Customer Racing in Europe, Chris Reinke, right of screen. Of course, our very own Martin Kuhl in the middle. There is the number 125 entry that will be a part of the Suzuka 10 Hour. They have faced a little bit of weather. There's been a few red flags across the course of the weekend. You go back to 2017 when we were here as part of the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup's 6th season. And a lot of discussion from 3-time Cup champion Alex Jung about this being an old-school Formula One circuit. Now, what he means by old-school Formula One circuit effectively is it's very technical but very tight. There's very little margin for error. And, of course, this circuit has been instrumental over a lot of years with the history of Formula One and the sport. Of course, Alain Prost, Ayrton Senna, there have been some great battles at the chicane. That ended and settled one championship. Of course, you go to James Hunt and Niki Lauda further back into the 70s. That had an impact on the championship. This is a very testing circuit, but it's also a circuit that a lot of these drivers really have been looking forward to attending.
Well, Sean, the safety car is coming in this lap, but you can still see very, very wet, and so it'll be interesting to find out just how quickly these drivers are going to be pushing it in the early stages of this race. You don't get any points if you spin out early, of course, so it's down to Haryanto to set the early pace with Alex Au pressing, and we saw Alex Au really pushing the pace during the qualifying session. He was right up behind Yasser Shahin at the beginning, wasn't he?
I think there was a little bit of gameplay in all of that as well. Of course, Alex Au, an experienced campaigner, he will be putting his knowledge to good use. I actually had to ask Yasser Shahin yesterday after those two dry 45-minute sessions, one of them red flagged twice, so limited laps. Have you been here before? He said, no, I haven't. I'm really enjoying it. His pace defied the fact that this was his very first trip to Suzuka Circuit. So Yasser Shahin is certainly one to watch. He's leading this championship currently. I said 18 points. My maths, you're going to have to pick me up on that. It's actually 15. No, it's not. It is 15 points, sorry, to Alex Au. And Alex Au twice to Anthony Liu last time out at Shanghai. He is going to try and press his advantage in experience here and push Andrew Haryanto. You go down to Andrew Haryanto, the reigning champion. He is a full 32 points back from the championship points leader. He has a lot of work to do, of course. This weekend, there is 52 points up for grabs if you set fastest lap and you also win both those races. So nothing's finished. We still have 4 races left in this championship. So things are getting set to go. You can see the safety car has started to pull away from the field. Andrew Haryanto will control the field. He'll be the first one to jump onto the gas. These Control Pirelli wet weather tyres doing the job. But again, under these conditions at speed, they are very much pioneers as they get into what will be the third lap. Coming into the chicane, and we get set for a start. He's on it. He doesn't want to get on it too early because the safety car still isn't off the circuit yet. But Andrew Haryanto very keen to press on and go for what would be his first win of this season.
So here we are. It is finally go time with just a little over 22 minutes on the clock here. Haryanto leads from Alex Au. We'll see in the early stages how this weather is affecting the field. Now, just for comparison's sake, in a free practice, they were lapping just a little over 2 minutes per lap. In qualifying, that was up to about 2:17. So we'll see just how wet it is, how it affecting the conditions when they get through the first racing lap here at Suzuka.
Into the S curves, of course, very famous, down to Dunlop curve, into the two Degners, under the tunnel, very much called a figure-8 circuit because it doubles back around itself underneath and back over the top. 130R, Spoon Curve. These are very iconic circuits, as corners rather, in the world of motorsport. And these drivers in some cases are treading brand new ground as they come down to Spoon. This is further back. That is the GT4 entry, 505 of Shozo Takahara, former Super GT competitor, making his debut in GT4 for the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup. Under the bridge, you can see, and heading down to, well, heading down to turn 12 and 13 and around Spoon Curve. That is the hairpin at turn 11.
Now, Sean, in 4th position, Biren Barkdy, he had a bit of an issue early on in qualifying, didn't he, with the wet weather as well. And he's not a fan of, for example, the nighttime racing. So, again, the gloomy conditions is not going to be helping him. But if he can get up into the podium positions, that would be a fantastic performance from him.
Well, he certainly has some work to do. He's not enjoying the greatest of years because he was right on the pace in the opener in Adelaide, in the heat, immense heat in Adelaide. He was right on the pace, but unfortunately in the end suffered 2 DNFs whilst he was right in the lead of the race going into the final couple of corners of race 2. Unfortunately, that was a second DNF for the weekend. That really put him back behind the 8 ball. 4-time winner in season 2018. That put him him right in the championship battle with Andrew Harrianto. It all came down to the final round. There is Harrianto. This is what he needs. He's putting that experience he took at the Spa 24-hour race recently to good use. So too Yasser Shahin. He felt that helped elevate him this weekend and made him more comfortable with coming to this circuit. They did a lot of miles because a 24-hour race is 48 times longer than a sprint race for the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup. So they have taken that experience. Tony Bates, this is his debut here. He's just come back from shoulder surgery. Has said that the doctor's given him the all clear and he is good to go. Currently holding down position number 5. So it's Harrianto, Alex Au, Yasser Shahin, Burt Birnbachty, Tony Bates and Vincent Florendo. On screen, that's the car that was the 37 that took both victories at the hands of Anthony Liu at Shanghai. This weekend, George Nakas, who is making his debut in the championship, the Australian driver, has done a lot of historic racing in sports cars. And, well, not a lot, he's done a bit in Australia. The first time he's driven a GT3 car, and he said, I'm really enjoying this. I think I need to do a little bit more of this. Was persuaded to come in by points leader Yasser Shahin. So far he's enjoying himself, but what a baptism of fire when you consider you're coming to one of the most iconic circuits in the world in conditions such as this. Alex Au, the CDVS Racers entry, doing a very good job. He's not letting Andrew Harrianto go. 2:21 is the best so far. That's a little bit slower than we saw during qualifying, but again, conditions have deteriorated just ahead of the start of this race. There is the championship winner from last year, Andrew Harrianto. Alex Au, former AM Cup champion. Yasser Shahin still doing a good job. In fact, it looks like Harrianto's just pulled out a little bit of a gap just to the last couple of corners. So it could be that Alex Au's found the limit of the grip, and he's just trying to work his way through as they come down to Spoon Curve.
Well, as you mentioned, just about 4 seconds a lap slower than they were in qualifying, but you imagine they would pick up a little bit of time as they get slightly more comfortable with the conditions. A lot of spray still coming up from this track. Doesn't look as though there's too much rain falling, so hopefully we can complete the race without any further safety cars. But of course, the possibility of an incident here in these kind of conditions obviously higher than usual, particularly with a number of drivers making their debut at this difficult circuit.
Well, we have to make a point of Shangyang Wen, who is the championship points leader in the GT4 category. Unfortunately for him, in the late stages of qualifying, he brought out the red flag with the car in the barriers. He found the level of grip. He'd been doing such a stellar job. Of course, 2 wins in the GT4 category last time out at Shanghai. He still is the championship points leader, but that is going to get interesting. Anderson Tanoto, who's the reigning champion of GT4, unfortunately not here this weekend, so we send our wishes out to him. He was due to... Oh, he's gone in too deep, has Alex Au. Just managed to gather it up before he wound up in the gravel trap. Well, he's learnt something out of that last time around. He set the fastest lap with a 2:21.3, 4/10 faster than Andrew Harrianto, pulled in about 4/10 that lap, but I gather this first sector is going to be a big loss for the man from Hong Kong. We expected a lot of things from Alex Au when we got to Zhuhai. He came through with that promise. Of course, he's done a lot of miles on the Zhuhai circuit. He set pole position for both those races, but unfortunately, through no fault of his own, he was eliminated in one accident, then an electrical issue or a technical issue with the car. Couldn't get him onto the grid for the second race at Zhuhai in a championship that really would have set him up. That round would have been ideal for Alex Au. So he's been rebuilding since then. He went on to Shanghai, of course, and second to Anthony Liu, who was only going to do that one race. So he didn't need to push too hard. So the fact that Anthony had such a big advantage, he is a local expert at Shanghai, it really wasn't reflective of just how big the advantage was between Alex Au and Anthony Liu, because Anthony Liu wasn't in the championship. So far as Alex Au was considering it, he was looking at the bigger picture, and we see that from Alex Au. He's done a lot of miles with the Cup. He's a very, very clever and calculating driver.
Well, Sean, as things stand, he's only going to pick up about 3 points on championship leader Yasser Shahin, who is just 1 place behind him at the moment in third. 18 points to 15. So Alex really needs to try and attack Andrew at the front of this field, get the 25 points for victory. We do have a rescheduled qualifying session for tomorrow's race, so if he can get maximum points today and then put the pressure on tomorrow, then we can really start to have a championship race on our hands.
Yeah, we did lose that first session again. It's been intermittent rain. It was very heavy in that first qualifying session. They elected to cancel the first 15-minute session. So the second session, which would traditionally set the grid for the second race on the weekend, now, is that the race leader who's just gone on 2 deep? No, that's Yasser Shahin. So he's run way deep, further down the back of the circuit. So he's had to consider that as well. That might have been coming through 130R actually. And when you go back to 130R, remember that 720 spin by former champion Alex Young? That was a couple of years ago now. Some of these drivers got experience then. One of them is the man on screen. Burtbur and Barty won both of the AM Cup races during that event. So he has some prior experience here. He's been doing a very good job, but these conditions, just don't discount the fact that they are treacherous, and for many of these drivers, Vincent Florendo is another who rejoined the championship at Zhuhai and finished on the podium twice, the driver from the Philippines. They are making their first laps here in these challenging conditions, so a lot to consider. Yasser Shahin, very impressive, still holding on to position 3 and has about a 4-second advantage over Burtbur Bhakti, who himself is trying to work his way back into this championship. Currently, Burtbur Bhakti is 49 points down additionally alongside Andrew Harrianto. The two of them going head-to-head, of course, into the final in Malaysia last year. We go into the final in Malaysia again this year, 23rd and 24th of November.
Well, a lot happening in this race, Sean. A lot of activity on this racetrack throughout the weekend with, of course, the Suzuka 10-hour marathon race on Sunday here. So they have managed to squeeze in that 10-minute additional rescheduled qualifying session for tomorrow at 11:15 local time ahead of tomorrow's race, which will be round 8 of the Cup, which starts from 3 p.m. tomorrow.
And talking about baptism of fire, that's George Nakis on screen. He is bringing up position number 17. He's in the Challenge Trophy this weekend. He's making his debut in a GT3 car in the pouring rain, in torrential conditions, for the very first time on one of the toughest circuits of them all, Suzuka International Circuit. And a local driver, Shozo Takahara, who is making his debut in the GT4 category, has a lot of experience on this circuit, and not a lot of difference in the pace between those two cars in these conditions. But certainly George is a little bit further back, but he was all smiles when I asked him how he was going on his debut run here with the Cup. He said, boy, I love these GT3 cars. They're a lot of fun. I'm traditionally a fan of the old school cars and the older sports cars back from the 80s and 90s, but he's really enjoying his debut run in the Cup. There is the race leader. He has opened up that advantage. It's now at 2.7 seconds to 21.3. Still that quick lap he did on lap 4, the second real race lap to Andrew Harrianto. Alex Au is now quickest with a 2:21.3, so he's pulled back about 0.8 of a second. Gap to 2.8 seconds. Yasser Shahin is 8 seconds back in position 3. Then Burtbur Bhakti and Tony Bates is still back there. He's not too far back from Burtbur Bhakti. It's about 4 seconds down now. He's 9 seconds down now, so he's lost a little bit last time round. So he'll be looking to try and learn a little bit from this, but certainly those conditions very, very challenging as we go back to the race leader in the number 28.
Well, Sean, we've yet to see any positional changes so far. Is that just a question of these conditions, the drivers being a little bit cautious, not wanting to make any mistakes and really push the pace? We have some, although the field is spreading out, but there are some battles around the midfield area.
We have to remember it is an unforgiving circuit. You can see how limited the runoff is. In fact, in some places it's not even a car width off the edge of the circuit to the barrier. So they're mindful of that. Any issue of DNF right now in this championship is going to basically rule them out. So nobody wants to do that. We spoke about it on the grid with Martin Kuhl. No one has really stamped their authority on this championship yet. No one wants to put a foot wrong. A number of these drivers are rookies here at this circuit. We can't highlight enough just how treacherous the conditions are, or just how unforgiving this circuit is. So they're taking all of that into consideration, and they have some work to do. So they're being very, very careful, and I think that is the thing to do. We've seen this year already. You go back to Zhuhai, and they got a little aggressive, and a few guys threw themselves off the circuit. That had a big impact in this championship. They can't afford to do that today.
Well, if Andrew Harrianto does win today, as things stand, with just under 11 minutes remaining in this race, perhaps one of the most strangest wins of his career. Just the fact that, not that it's been handed to him, but you know, almost by virtue of qualifying in pole position there, it has sort of been a little bit of procession at this stage, 2/3 of the way through the race.
Alex Au's just suffered a problem that last lap. He might have gone off deep a little bit down at Spoon Curve potentially, but he's lost a fair bit of ground. It'll be interesting to see what his lap time's like, because he was just less than 3 seconds back from Andrew Harrianto, but he's dropped a big length back now. So Andrew Harrianto's just crossed the line with a 2:21.3 And the gap's now out to 4.5 seconds. All right, it wasn't quite as bad as it seems. It may have been the longer lens that was just defying how big that gap was. So he's okay. In fact, 2:21.3, no, it's still his best. Last time round, 2:20.
Well, pretty big difference.
So he lost about a second and a half. So there was a bit of a setback. By contrast, Yasser Shahin's made some ground. 2:21.2, 2:23 dead for Burabir and Barkty. Tony Bates got a little bit of work to do. 2:26.3. So he certainly wasn't at Spa. That was a fantastic event. You'll see some footage with that. Fans of the Cup will have no doubt seen it on social media already, because the fans that watch the Cup and the magazine program will get to see just what unfolded at Spa. It was a miraculous event. Conditions very, very challenging on another tough circuit. Take this circuit and put it in the dark with very heavy rain, and that will give you some indication of what those drivers were faced with. They got to the end of what was an incredible event. We're all very proud of the efforts that they put in. And of course, that was Andrew Haryanto, it was Sun Jing Zhu, it was Jeffrey Lee, who made his return to an Audi, which was good to see, the man who's done more starts in the Cup, and Yasser Shahin, so a big event for them. There is George Nacker still back there in position number 7, and he is continuing to learn. He's made up some time at 2:33 his best. He's done that in the last lap around, so he's again learning as he gets around this circuit. And the main thing as part of the Cup, it's about having a good time for some of these drivers, and he's no doubt putting this to good use and filing it away for future reference. And what great conditions to do it in. He's made a bit of a gap now on Takahara back there, who's leading in GT4, and Wang Dengjia. We've got to highlight his run too. He did a good job on his debut. Only did the one race at Shanghai, and he's running around here comfortably. Hasn't really put a foot wrong, and he's back there in position number 2. And in fact, he's only 15 seconds rather down on the GT4 leader. So that's a very impressive run for a man who's really had very limited running in a GT car, whether GT3 or GT4.
Well, Sean, Andrew Haryanto still leads here, 4.5 seconds ahead of Alex Au and Yasser Shahin in third. And we asked Andrew ahead of the race who was going to win. He kind of refused to predict.
I think they've given up this year after everything that's gone on. Now, Alex Au's just punched out the fastest second and third sectors of this last lap. So he's gained, no, he hasn't gained, in fact. He's dropped just a fraction more, but that first sector was the one that brought him unstuck. In fact, the fastest first sector has been Andrew Haryanto. So it does look like it's clearing just a little bit when you look at the long shot, but the damage has been done. The track's wet. Well, damage is done. That is one of the GT4s. So that may be Wang Dengjia, who's just come off the circuit. So he will regroup. He's talking about him not putting a foot wrong. I think that's the commentators cursing him. I think I'll stop talking. I'll leave it to you.
Well, both the top two drivers into the 220s for the first time on that last lap. So as you said, they are beginning to pick up speed, but still good 3 seconds off the qualifying pace, which was well, equally wet, you'd say.
Well, 2:17s was the qualifying pace, yeah, so that wasn't too bad. In fact, 2:17.0 for Haryanto, 2:17.5 for Alex Au, who may well have gone quicker. He came in late in the session. He started with high tyre pressures. The team checked them and sent him out with about 3 minutes to go, and we had that red flag, unfortunately, for Shang Wen. It was very, very late in the session. He said he just went in a little bit too hot into that corner. Very technical nature. You talk to the drivers who are rookies here this weekend, and technical's the word they're using. What they mean is a lot of changes of direction, mid to high speed corners. It's a lot to take in, and again, daunting because the Armco is so close. There is not a lot of runoff at this circuit. In fact, talking to a couple of the mentors, Martin Rupp and Wei Ron Tan, they said exactly the same thing. I did promise I wasn't going to say that during the Blancpain race that Wei Ron found the limit at 130R, but I think I needed something to say, so I'll have to take back on that one. He did find the limit and the tyre barriers.
Breaking promises again, Sean.
It's all right.
Got to stop doing that.
Yeah, it's the Australian in me. What can I do?
Well,
anyway, moving on as we get back to the leaders. So that is further back. That's Wang Dengjia, and he is currently, well, he's about 2 minutes down on the field. So the leaders may not be too far behind him, but still he's doing a very good job. 8 laps in the books, and the pace is still coming down. In fact, Andrew Haryanto's just crossed the line again. 2:20.185, his fastest lap. There is Alex Au. Now, what's the gap? 4.3. He's pulled in quite a time. First into the teens at 2:19.55 for Alex Au. I think he's going to run out of time. Just under 5.5 minutes left on the clock. You can see just how much clearer it is now over those early laps. Yasser Shahin, by contrast, is now 15.9 seconds back from Alex Howe, so he's dropped a little bit more ground. In fact, he's dropped down. We've missed this. Something's happened with Yasser Shahin back down behind Burrit Biran-Bakhti. So his lap last time round was at 2:33. He's dropped 11 seconds on the pace of the leaders. In fact, 14 seconds down on Alex Howe. So we haven't seen the championship points leader. This won't be too bad, but now that is a bit of an advantage to Burrit Biran-Bakhti and to Andrew Harriante. But Alex Howe is going to have the bigger advantage, because that will now be potentially 18 points, depending on who the fastest lap is gone to. Well, that's gone to Alex Howe, so that could well be 19 points to him. And Yasser Shahin will be back down to 12, so he's closed the gap 7 points. The difference at the moment is 15, so this really starts to make things very, very interesting. Experience, again, does show, especially in conditions like this, and Alex Howe is putting that to good use at the moment, despite the fact he is still 4.3 seconds down on race leader and reigning champion, Andrew Harriante.
Well, the Cup just has a habit of having very, very close finishes towards the end of the year, doesn't it? And it's already a pretty tight championship race. It's going to get even tighter if things stay as they are. Now, it looks like Yasser was able to recover from whatever issue he'd had on the previous lap. He's about 3 seconds down on Burrit for third place, but losing some points there in that position change. The first one we've seen, I think I'm right in saying, in this entire race.
We were just looking at Vincent Florendo there, who again was on the podium twice in the Zhuhai event, the second race weekend of the 2019 season. He was saying just before the race that he'd done no simulator laps before this weekend, had never been here before, and yet he's punching out laps in the 2:25, so he's only 5 seconds or so off the pace of the race leader. They've had past experience here, so he said that he's finding this weekend harder than the tough weekend he had at Shanghai. So that is a bit of an indication of just how difficult it is for somebody who's a rookie at the circuit. And he's doing a very, very impressive job.
Well, Andrew and Alex now into the 2:19s, so continuing to pick up speed at the front of the field. But Andrew with nearly a 5-second gap. You can see that fastest lap, 2:19.5, and just fractionally faster than Alex's own 2:19.559. But about a 5-second gap between the top two in this field, with a couple of laps to go here.
And there's Wyndham Jar just moving aside for race leader Andrew Harriante. You can see a little bit of water at that part of the circuit too. That's through the S's. So still something for them to continue as they climb up the hill. So Yasser Shahin made a little bit of ground last time round on Burrit Biran-Bakhti, but certainly the damage was done the previous lap when he dropped 14 seconds on the race leader. So we'll find out a little bit more about that. Remember to keep up to date with the social media platforms in both English and Chinese, the various platforms, as we keep you abreast of what goes on with the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup in the 8th season. This is race number 87 since the series first began in 2012. There is Alex Howe just coming through down at the hairpin. And as we go through the top of the circuit, it's down around turn 17. Andrew Harriante continues his charge with less than 2 minutes left, so I'd suggest this is pretty close to the penultimate lap, although it's 30 minutes plus race leader one more lap, so there may well be 2 laps left in this race. Whether anybody can make any kind of position change, the field has strung out a little bit now. Yasser Shahin will be doing his best to try and close in on Biran-Bakhti, but he also knows he has a significant advantage, in fact 32 points over both Harriante and Biran-Bakhti coming into this race. That is a reasonable lead, but he was hoping to build on that, not actually lose ground to anybody. For somebody who's a rookie in this race, finishing fourth isn't too bad when you consider Harriante, Alex Howe and Burrit Biran-Bakhti have all seen miles here at this circuit in the past. So first of the rookies, effectively, is Yasser Shahin ahead of Tony Bates and Vincent Florendo.
That's right. He'll be disappointed not to cement a podium finish here. But you're right, the championship battle is the bigger picture for Yasser Shahin. Currently leads from Alex Howe by 15 points. Now that will shrink as things stand, but he will still be the championship leader unless we see some dramatic positional changes in the final stages here.
Dropped a second to the man on screen in the CTVS Races entry, did Andrew Harriante last time round. The advantage is still just a shade under 4 seconds. Burrit Biran-Bakhti, well, he's just slightly extended that advantage over Yasser Shahin by 0.3 of a second last time round, so that's staying fairly stationary. Tony Bates again, he was a rookie here. The first 45-minute practice session yesterday saw 2 red flag periods. They got about 7 or 8 laps, those drivers that just kept pressing on. The second session, he didn't fit green rubber. A lot of the drivers went to the brand new DHD2 tyre, a fresh set of rubber, whereas Bates ran around with older rubber. He said maybe that was a bad strategy call at the end of the day. They probably could have bolted on a new set. They lost a little bit of ground, and then of course we went straight into qualifying this morning. It was wet, so he is still finding his way at the circuit. You could argue that Shahin has put his time to better use, but of course Bates, since we last saw him at Shanghai, has had time off for surgery. He hasn't been in a race suit. Yes, Shahin, well, he's done quite significant time in the race seat, of course, as one of those 4 drivers in the 2019 Spa 24-hour race just a couple of weeks ago at Spa in Belgium. And what an event that was. Clock is down to 0. This should be the penultimate lap. They should see the last lap board next time round. Trying to pick up who we're looking at there. That is the race leader. So Alex Au really is pushing. That doesn't really look like a 3.9 second gap. Let's hope Arianto's going okay. Of course, the modern race car has a lot of electronics in it. This is very, very heavy rain. You don't know what's coming into the car and whether that can have a little bit of an impact. Doesn't sound bad, doesn't seem to be an issue. It could just be that, well, to win, you can win by 1,000th of a second at the end of the day. I'm sure Andrew Arianto won't want to do that, but he has the advantage at the moment as he comes through that famous last chicane to come around what would be, I expect, the second last time to be greeted by the last lap board. Let's hope it doesn't prove me a lie. There you go. There it is, under that Pirelli signage. And Andrew Arianto goes through for, well, I'm not going to say it. I was going to say what could be his first win of the year, but we've been known to curse that in the past, so I'm not going to say those things.
Well, you're absolutely right about the gap, down to less than 2.5 seconds from nearly 4 seconds, so big change on that last lap. Now, probably still too much unless we see something dramatic from Alex Au.
Lap traffic with Shozo Takahara, but he's an experienced campaigner around here, so yes, he does. He pulls out of the way. He's got nothing to gain or lose by getting in the way of the race leaders, so he has done the admirable thing, moved across, and that has allowed Andrew Arianto to go through without too much of delay. So too Alex Au. They are heading back up the hill for the final time. And they're catching up to George Nakas, as it turns out, too. So there is a little bit of traffic there. Can George manage to keep out of the way? Depends on how much effort he's putting into keeping eyes forward. He sees the blue flag potentially. He's got a lot to focus on. Again, these are his maiden laps of this circuit under these conditions.
Well, Alex Au is giving it everything. A fastest lap in that penultimate lap at 2:19.2, and some purple sections flashing up on our board. He's probably going to run out of time, but he's certainly going to give it a go.
George has seen the race leader. He's let him through. No doubt he'll be aware that Alex Au isn't too far behind as they head down to Spoon. There is the blue flag. He wants to enjoy himself, doesn't want to be involved in an incident, moves across, gets off the race line, which is often in conditions like this the better line, which is why you'll often see in wet conditions the drivers taking what are relatively unique lines that are very different to the dry line on the race circuit. And no doubt Andrew Arianto and Alex Au will be putting that theory to good use as we get down to the final stages of this race, and what would be another victory in the Cup to Andrew Arianto. But certainly more good championship points to Alex Au. That is what we're looking at. Again, keep up to date with the social media platforms as we give you all the news about what's going on, and stay with us tomorrow for what will be race number 8 of the 2019 season. Race number 88 in the history of the Cup. You've been to, what, all 99 of them or something?
Maybe 66, 77. Well, that is that in the books. Andrew Arianto, he's finished second and third so far this season, but that is his first win of this season as he bids to retain his championship, and that gives him, well, every chance, Sean, because still 3 races to go, plenty of points up for grabs, and well, stemmed from a solid qualifying position, but he didn't really put a foot wrong in the race, did he?
Well, provisionally, that moves him to within about 7 points of Yasser Shahin too. We've got more to see about that too. He will get an extra point for fastest lap in this race. There is Tony Bates, just bouncing his way through the chicane for the final time, the number 24 AFS entry. That will be a good result for him. He'll be happy with that, but also disappointed not to have made the podium. He would have preferred dry conditions. So things are interesting. You've got an update.
Well, just the extra point awarded for pole position rather than for fastest lap.
we have had different rules throughout the seasons of the Cup, Sean.
Memory is one of those things that tends to leave you first, doesn't it?
Who needs it,
in your old age.
The main thing, of course, 25 points in the books for Andrew this particular time. 18 for Alex Au, 15 for Bur Barkley, and 12 for Yasser Shahin. So we'll get confirmation of the championship standings in a little while. Wang Dangjia at the rear of field. Solid championship points for him in GT4. And this particular race, not threatening the leaders, but he moves up to within, well, right up the field in the GT4 category. Now within just 9 points of second position in his championship.
Well, there are the provisional results. Of course, Andrew Harrianto takes his first win of the 2019 season. Alex Au, again across the line. This is his third consecutive race crossing the line in position number 2. Bur embarked up to position 3 after a setback for Yasser Shahin about 2/3 of the way through the race. Shahin retains, at the moment, his position at the lead of the championship points table. We go back to Tony Bates in position number 5. Vincent Florendo in position number 6. And then on his debut, George Nakis in this championship is classified in position 7. Shozo Takahara on his debut in the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup will take victory in GT4, and Wang Dangjia, who is into his third race in the Cup, he made his debut at Shanghai, his second start, he takes position number 2 and some good solid points. Of course, unfortunately for Yang Chengwen, he came off in qualifying. He was here this weekend. Anderson Tanoto was also due this weekend, but has had a late setback. He's having some surgery back at home, so we wish him all the best. A couple of other drivers unfortunately unable to be here this weekend due to other commitments, so no denying who the race winner is, provisionally again, but you should see there's no real drama there. Now, you've been on the calculator. That does concern me a little. We will get to that. Can somebody please just back this up, because I'm a little doubtful about the accuracy of this, but go to give it your best.
We talked about provisional race results. These are very much unofficial championship standings, but I think it's 93 for Yasser, 84 for Alex Au, 75 for Andrew Harrianto, and 64 for Bur Barkley. So roughly 10 points between those top 4, but still very close, given that there's 25 plus an additional point per race here.
We got the thumbs up. Will we see the trademark smile back? We haven't seen too much of it this year. You can't get a sensible conversation out of him when he's in a good mood. He's all giggles. So that might be back this time round. Bur Barkley will be pretty happy with that too. He's a little frustrated early. Get the helmet off. Who are you pointing at? Oh, he's busy celebrating. There's Ingo Mater. There is Chris Reinke, the boss of Audi Sport Customer Racing. And that looks like it might be the back of Martin Rump's head, because he's done some miles here this year already with the Blancpain GT World Challenge Asia and Bur Barkley. Good mates, the two of them. They were 1-2 in the championship last year. They dominated the championship last year. Funnily enough, coming into this round, identical on points, well down the order, as there is that iconic Ferris wheel here at Suzuka International Circuit on the outside of the final corner. But we will hear very shortly from Andrew Harrianto down there, no doubt, with Sophie. And Alex Au will be happy with that too. Despite carrying a little bit of success ballast, that probably worked in his advantage this time round in these wet conditions. He'll be happy with that haul of points too. So no doubt we will hear from the winners very, very soon.
Well, that was Alex Au, who finished in second. Burrit, I think you have to, well, not necessarily performance of the day, but moving up into the podium positions. Not known to like these particular conditions, so he's done very well today here.
I think in these conditions you could say there's been some very stellar performances from the bulk of this field, because it was treacherous. It was very, very wet on the start. We're still sitting here saturated after our time on the grid, but for the drivers, a lot of work to do. We are down on the grid, it seems, in Parc Fermé with Sophie and the winner of this race, Andrew Harrianto, the reigning champion of the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup. Let's hear from the man from Indonesia.
Congratulations, Andrew, especially with this raining condition from pole to wing with torrential rain. How does your feel, and especially talk us through the very beginning?
Yeah, the beginning was a bit tricky because I didn't have any reference in front of me, but I just tried to keep it safe, and it paid off. But towards the end, Alex was catching me so fast, so I had a lot of stress towards the end.
And for the third time being here in Suzuka circuit, what did you learn, especially from this race today?
Oh, a lot. I remembered again where the rivers were and where the standing waters were, so just avoiding that should be quite safe here.
Thank you so much. One more time, enjoy your victory. Back to your guys.
Well, Sean, you never quite know whether to take him seriously. Our general rule of thumb is not to take him seriously. He said he was feeling the pressure in the closing stages, but laughing as he said it. I mean, how aware do you think he would have been of Alex closing in?
Well, I think he'd be very, very aware, and he knows the calibre of Alex Howe, and Alex doesn't give up. Sounds like Sophie may well be down there with Alex Howe, who closes in just a little on the championship points leader.
Alex, starting from second to finish on second, but we see you push really hard at the very end. Are you a little bit disappointed you cannot overtake Andrew?
Well, at the beginning of the race, I pushed a little bit. With a safety car start, you can't do anything with the start, really. I pushed a little bit. The gap was closing a little bit by little bit. But I think the visibility is getting worse and worse as I close further. So I think it's very difficult to overtake in the wet in Suzuka. So with the championship at stake, I look at my rear mirrors, and third place is quite far away. So I really ran out of excuses to push. At the very end, the track condition improved, so I got a bit bored and pushed a little bit to see what the car can do without taking too much risk. So just to get some data to have a look at the end. So yeah, it's good for the championship, but I couldn't win the race.
Thank you so much, Alex. Now it's our time to take a look at our awarding ceremony right now. Cross back to your guys.
Well, it's nice to be able to set a fastest lap while bored behind the wheel, Sean.
Yeah. Sometimes I wonder. But anyway, I mean, the reality is he's a student of the sport. He loves it. He takes it very, very seriously, sometimes maybe too seriously. But he knew what he needed to do. He was watching what was going on. You ask whether or not he was aware and whether Andrew Harrianto was aware of where Alex Howe were. Yes, they were. They knew what was going on. And Alex Howe, he would have had an abacus in the car, no doubt, working out what the championship points were like and what he needed to do. He didn't need to take a risk. He has an advantage over Andrew Harrianto. He pressed that. He found some more out, as he said, working on exactly what advantage had in the championship, and that he didn't need to push any harder. He's got some data for tomorrow. If it is wet, again, these conditions are a little bit challenging, a little bit unpredictable. We're not 100% sure what tomorrow will be like. Today, they did warn there would be storms. It did hit, unfortunately, in qualifying and in the race, but we'll see what tomorrow brings. It could be a completely different day.
Well, given what we were fearing at the beginning of the race, Sean, I think you'd have to say it's a tremendous success that we just saw that very early safety car and it didn't reappear. I think the odds would have been very much against that scenario. Well, we were looking about 35 minutes ago as we were out on the track in the heavens. We could see the weather moving in, and then just as we came on air, the rain started to fall. We were pretty drenched coming back into the commentary booth, and you could see the spray on the track throughout this race. But they negotiated the entire 30 minutes safely, and it was good, clean racing in the end.
It was good, clean racing. We've seen that so often this year. And I think now the drivers are starting to get a little bit serious. It's funny to say that they're taking it seriously. Of course, they've taken it seriously all year. But they have got involved in silly little incidents. It has meant that some of the favourites coming into this year, of course, you had Biren Bhakti and Andrew Harrianto, the reigning champion, who dominated the championship pretty much last year. They took most of the wins between the two of them. They leapt away in this championship. Yasser Shahin didn't win a race until Zhuhai this year. It was funny when we saw that win. We commented that he'd been there in the championship last year on the podium a number of times, but hadn't quite made that step to the top step of the podium. They're all running at the absolute peak of their abilities. Alex Howe, very experienced campaigner, former AM Cup champion in the Audi Sport R LMS Cup. But they are really working very, very hard for points. They've had to push hard. The games have stopped. They have to be serious about this championship now. Yasser has an advantage. He commented after Shanghai that the advantage he took in, he dropped a little bit of time, but you can never have too big an advantage in a championship like this against drivers of this calibre in identical machinery. But this is exactly what the reigning champion needed. A pole to flag victory for Andrew Harrianto. He'll be very happy with that and be looking forward to another one tomorrow.
Well, it is one of the most competitive championship races that we've had here in the Cup, at least in terms of the depth of the competition. Last year's top two in 5th and 6th coming into this into this race here in Suzuka. And let's not forget about Tony Bates, who was third in the championship standing room, 54 points. He's picked up another 10 points, I believe, here. So he should be level with Burton Barkley. So it is tight at the top. And, well, we'll see a lot more coming out of tomorrow's race, who is going to be in the driving seat heading into the final race of the season in Malaysia.
There's still a lot to play for, of course. The second seat in the road to Suzuka for the 10-hour next year. At this event, there is going to be an entry from the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup. Of course, Anthony Liu won his way into that seat by virtue of winning both those races and top point scoring last time out at Shanghai. The winner of Suzuka will join him, and then the winner on combined points from the, in fact, you've got to go back to Zhuhai and Shanghai for Anthony Liu. He was top point scorer across both those events, but the winner of the first event at Adelaide, together with the final round of the championship when we get to the closing stages in November at Sepang in Malaysia, will take the third seat. Chris Reinke handing on the championship trophies to the podium place getters.
So confirmation, Burton Barkley on the right of those three in third position. Alex Au in second on the left-hand side. And Andrew Haryanto takes his first win of the season. It's not often we say that for a reigning champion as late as round 7. That just shows you how this season has developed.
The smile's back. I wonder if that is going to be the turning point for the reigning champion. The giggles are back too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Alex Au, he's always fast, isn't he? He hasn't had the luck sometimes.
He could well be the runaway championship points leader after the performance he set. He set the fastest lap in that race. He's won the coveted Pirelli Trophy as they join side by side on the podium. Left of screen, Alex Au. In the centre, Andrew Haryanto. And right of screen, his 2018 rival, Burton Barkley from Singer Plan B by Absolute. He's been doing a lot of miles this year too. Was scheduled to be in the Spa seat, had to make a late step out, and that saw, of course, the man who's done more starts in the Cup than anybody else, Jeffrey Lee, back into an Audi for that event. There is Chris Reinke, there is Martin Kuhl, and of course the Pirelli team that support this championship so well, all up there on the podium. But the great thing is we get to do this all over again tomorrow with another qualifying session.
That is at 11:15. They've managed to squeeze in just a 10-minute session because it was cancelled from today. 11:15 local time here in Japan. So check your clocks depending on where you are in the world. And then the race, round 8 of the Cup, will start at 3 p.m. for us here.
Champagne time! Well, they're going to get a shower one way or the other. There's a little bit of sprinkling rain out there. Conditions are certainly...
Probably already wet.
Well, I think they probably are. But what a great result in the end. A lot of smiles. There'll be some happy drivers. They'll be glad to have got that one through again. A very daunting circuit. Some of these drivers, it was the first time they've been here. So to get through and finish this one relatively unscathed was a great result. Of course, we'll go on to the GT4 podium shortly. Shozo Takahara, the local driver alongside Wing Dangjia. And boy, wasn't he a happy man on the podium last time out at Shanghai. He knows how to celebrate. He had a great time, the Chinese driver, and is really enjoying his time with the Audi.
Well, Sean, just notice Alex Au has now had 4 second-place finishes from the 7 races. But it was really Zhuhai for rounds 3 and 4, where he just got a single point in each of those races with those pole positions, but not able to finish the race. That was what really let his season down so far. But, yeah, as you said, getting onto the GT4 positions here. And Wang Dangjia.
No, it's not. In fact, it's going to be the Challenge Trophy, which is new for this year, for the new drivers into the championship. And I can tell you, George Nakis, who's up there on the podium, next again to Vincent Florendo, who's had a pretty good year after his return to the Cup. It's the Zhuhai round, where he's on the podium outright 3 times, as well as taking top honours in the Challenger Trophy. He'll be happy to be up there again, especially as we were talking prior to this race. He said, this is a tough event for me. I haven't done any miles here before. I haven't done any simulator laps. And this is my debut run here. So too for George Nakis, left of screen. He'll be happy to be up there too. Just reward for a guy who's making his GT3 debut. First up ever. What a place to come to do it at Suzuka, the Australian driver. So he'll be pretty happy with that too. Bit unaccustomed to being on a podium, receiving a trophy, but not a bad journey north to come to Suzuka circuit and take home a trophy. A good result for him.
Well, Vincent 6th overall here, but he got 2 third-place finishes outright in Zhuhai in rounds 3 and 4, so a great weekend for him there. We haven't seen that form from him elsewhere so far this year, but as he said, picking up first place in the Challenger Trophy here in Suzuka in round 7.
Well, he did make the point when we went to Shanghai last time round. That is a modern-day Formula 1 circuit. A lot of runoff, a lot of high-speed corners, a lot of hard physical work behind the wheel. Whereas Zhuhai, the longest permanent circuit in China, very much a stop-start style circuit. So it was easier for him to push the car. He found some advantage there. Of course, it was wet, if you remember the Zhuhai race as well. So that was a little bit challenging for the drivers too. That was something they had to contend with. Whereas Shanghai was a bigger challenge, although he said just prior to this race that he felt that this was another challenge again beyond Shanghai. So to be on the top step of the Challenge Trophy podium and to be in that position to gain some more solid points and finish 6th in this race, he'll be pretty happy with that.
Well, a couple of more bottles of champagne to be presented, and that will go to Shozo Tagahara. Local driver will take the title for this race. Not the title, but the race win in the GT4 category. But this is Wang Dangjia, who has been racing pretty consistently so far this year.
You should have the championship points just beside you there.
I should do.
So that's a little bit of mathematics for you to battle your way through.
Well, here you go, Sean. 36 points now for Mr. Wang Dangjia, which doesn't move him up too many places, up only into 6th, but he's 9 points out of 2nd place. Still quite a long way behind Shengyan Wen, who is here for Suzuka, but unable to take part in today's race after that incident in qualifying.
So a very happy winner of this race in the GT4 category. So a top effort there. And another nice result. Of course, you can keep up to date with everything going on with the championship, with the Audi Sport R8 LMS Cup website, and of course the various social media platforms as we go through to race 7 of the race 8 of the 2019 season. The 8th season will be race number 88. It's a lucky one if you're a Chinese driver, so that could be very interesting come tomorrow.
It is. Wang Dangjia, put your money on him for the race win.
There's every chance that could happen. We'll see what the weather brings, but make sure you stay with us. That will come tomorrow. You've got the timetable over there. I think you've stolen it off me, haven't you?
Well, qualifying is 11:15. Sean, it's that memory again.
When's the race?
3 o'clock local time.
Less talk, more fact.
Well, there you go, 3 o'clock local time.
Thank you very much.
Stay tuned again. Send us your questions on Facebook. We'll do our best to answer them as well.
And don't forget, tomorrow afternoon, after the race, we will go inside Zone Red, behind-the-scenes look at the championship, and we will be able to keep you abreast of everything that goes on this weekend. Thank you for staying with us. Take us away, Mark. We will close out what has been a fantastic day.
We will. We are hoping to have some very special guests. We'll confirm those tomorrow, so do tune in for after the race. But Andrew Haryanto getting his championship back on track today with his first race of the season for the reigning champion. We'll see you tomorrow.